Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be working with the Simon Says Stamp January 2018 card kit. Here I'm going to give you a quick look at what was included in that. So jumping right into card number 1, I'm going to use my MFT Blueprints 32 frame die to cut out a panel from this red and pink heart paper. Then I'm going to use my ATG gun to attach that to the top of one of the black card bases. So I had these 3 envelopes. These are by 7 Gypsies. I had picked them up in a huge pack of envelopes of all different sizes that I got at Tuesday morning. And those small squares on the second cut apart page fit almost perfectly with those. So I thought they would be fun to play with on the front of the card base. Here I'm just adding some score tape to the back of all of those. And then I'm going to position my envelopes on the front of the card base, and I'll match up one of the squares with each of the envelopes. I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer to the card, so here I'm using my Spectrum Noir pen just to go over that heart, and then I'll also swipe that across the love on the top sentiment. For the inside of the card, I'm using a Neenah panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4. I'm just using my Misty to line up the sentiment, love you, and I'll stamp that out in Lawn Fawn Lobster ink. Then I'm going to finish that off with one of those smaller square stamps, and this one says Bunches. Here I'm going to add some ATG to the back of that, and I'll place it on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 1. So for card number 2, I'm going to use this pretty mint polka dot paper, and I saved some of my cut aparts in one stripe that I could attach to the front of a card base. I'm going to attach that here using my ATG gun, and the reason I'm attaching it now is I'm going to use my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and I wanted to have that continuous stitching around both layers. So I'm going to attach that to the top of the card base here. And then I also have this cut apart sentiment that says Sweet. I wanted to make that pop a little bit, so I'm going to just use some score tape here, and I'll attach that to a scrap of MFT's Poppy cardstock. And then I'll trim around that, just leaving about 1/8 of an inch border. And then I'll again use some score tape to attach that to the front of the card base. For the inside of the card, I'm again using a Neenah panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to use this Delicata ink that came in the card kit. This stencil is from Heidi Swapp. I don't have a specific name for it. It's called a spray stencil, and the number on the packaging is 00838. So if I can find a link for this, I will include that on my blog post. I went ahead and hit that with my heat gun just to help it dry a little bit, because this Delicata ink is more of a pigment ink. And then I decided that I had a little bit too much of a border around this stencil, so I'm just trimming 1/4 of an inch off each side. I'm going to finish that up then using the stamp I Really Like You, and I'm stamping that using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I'll go ahead and place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 2. For card number 3, I'm going to be working with 3 of the cut aparts. So here I'm adding some ATG gun to the back of those, and then I'm going to place those down on some MFT, let's see, this is cement gray cardstock. And then I'll go ahead and trim those out, leaving about 1/8 of an inch border around each one. For my background panel, I'm again using that Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and this measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'm going to place that on the front of my card base. And then these 3 panels fit just about perfectly right across that. So for the 2 on either end, I decided I would just stick those directly onto the card base. And then the one in the center, I'm going to pop up with some Scotch foam tape just to give a little bit more dimension. So I placed that first one down. And then to help me line up that second one, I'm going to use that Misty stamping grid. And then I'll go ahead and place that center panel down. For the inside of the card, I'm again working on a Neenah panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to use the stamp You're My Favorite. I'm just placing that using some Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And then there was this really cute stripe of XOXO, and I decided I wanted to add a little bit more in here, so I'm going to stamp that on either end of the sentiment using some Lawn Fawn lobster ink. I went ahead and attached that to the inside of my card. And then I remembered I had these little hearts, which I think were from the Valentine's kit that Simon Says Stamp did last year. I have no idea what the brand is, but it was just about exactly the same size as the heart on that cut apart, and this has a really nice shine to it. So I just used a glue dot to attach that there, and that's going to complete card number 3. For card number 4, I wanted to create a shaker window. So what I'm doing is stamping out all of these little square sentiments, and I'm going to stamp that on MFT's Pink Lemonade, Poppy, and Red Hot cardstock using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. Then here I'm going to cut out each of those, just leaving a slight border around all of the edges. Here I'm going to trim out a panel from this striped paper using my MFT Blueprints 32 die. And then from that I'm going to use the MFT Square Shaker Window die to cut out an opening. These shaker window dies are really handy because you can purchase their shaker pouches that will fit right over top of your background paper and just pop right in that cutout. It's hard to see there, but there's the clear plastic shaker pouch. So I ended up only using the Red Hot and Pink Lemonade cutouts that I had done. I ended up with tons of words. And here I'm adding a few more of those red hearts. I'm going to attach some 1/8 inch score tape around the back side of that window. And then I'll place that down over top of all of my shaker elements. I went ahead then and trimmed around that to make it a little bit cleaner. And I've again attached score tape around now the outside edge of that shaker pouch. And then here you'll see that frame fits just perfectly around there. I'll use some ATG and then I'll attach that to the top of my card base. For the inside of the card, I'm again using a Neenah panel measuring 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to use the sentiment XOXO and I'm stamping that using Lawn Fawn Lobster ink. Then I'm going to place 3 of those hearts around it and I'll stamp that out using Lawn Fawn Peachy Keen ink. I'll place that there on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 4. Now, before I move on to card number 5, I wanted to show you quickly, these little squares ended up kind of all collecting together in one lump and they would not shake around. I could not get them to break apart. So I ended up tearing this apart. Luckily I was able to get everything off without anything ripping. And here I'm just going to use some score tape and I think also some glue dots to attach the hearts and a few of the words to the background. That way, when everything else shakes around, you'll still be able to see those. So if you decide you want to case the card, I would highly recommend that you attach some of those in the back of the window there. And moving on to card number 5, I'm again using that MFT Blueprints 32 frame die to cut out a panel for the top of my card base. Here I've got some scrap ribbon. It came in one of those sets with lots of little spools. I may have gotten it at AC Moore, possibly at Tuesday Morning, but there's no brand on the spool, it's blank. So this is just a pretty gray ribbon with some gold flecks in it. I've trimmed that off and attached some score tape to the back of it. So there I'm just placing that down in between two of the heart rows, and I'll wrap it around my panel. Now, before the card kit came out, I had actually already ordered the Pebbles ephemera set for this collection. So since I had it, I thought I would use it on a few of these cards. This is a really pretty heart that came in it, and I'm using my ATG gun to attach that to some MFT steel gray cardstock. I went ahead and just trimmed around that, leaving a little bit of a border. And then here I'm going to pop that up using some Scotch foam tape, and I'll place that down on top of the ribbon. Then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of that whole panel. Then I'll go ahead, peel away the backing, and place that on the front of my card base. And I decided it needed a little bit of sparkle, so I'm using my Spectrum Noir pen all over the top of that heart. Here for the inside of the card, I'm again using a Neenah panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4. I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "I really like you," using Lawn Fawn Peachy Keen ink. And then I'm going to again use one of those squares just to reiterate that "really." And that's again with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I'll attach the panel to the inside of my card. And that completes card number 5. Here is a quick look back at all of the cards from today. You'll find additional photos as well as a full list of supplies at my blog post, linked in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.